Hey, BATT Family, and hey, Scott.
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
It is pretty great. We have a new audio setup we're working with here. We're going to test some stuff out.
And-
you are recumbent.
Oh my God, it's so nice. I'm nice and reclined. We won't have any more of those, all of a sudden me going, because the pin goes out of the chair and it slams me backwards. I can actually just sit back.
Because you're already at a 55-degree angle right now.
It's phenomenal, especially after doing 10 hours of roller derby. So like anybody that listens to the podcast normally is going to be like, who is that person with Mark? No, it's Scott. He just did an entire day of roller derby announcing. So
yeah. I mean, you sound essentially the way I do after day one of Gen Con.
Nice.
Yeah. And at day two, and Jason can confirm this, it's awful. It's miserable. But man, it's so much fun.
Yeah, it was quite nice. I mean, we had a great time. Got to train my new announcers because I am the head announcer for South Bend Roller Derby. And then we went to the after party and I was like, I would like a lavender tea latte, please. And I definitely need a little bit of honey in there. And so like I drank it. So everyone's like, isn't that hot? Yes, it is.
That's the way you want it.
And then I went back and had a piece of pizza. They had this fantastic 4-cheese pizza. It was amazing. It was called Walking Cloud Cafe. If you're in Mishawaka, phenomenal. But then I went back up and got in line and was in line for another 10 minutes. It's like, I want another one of these, please.
Look, we try and keep our intro short. We try because people have told us in the past of one of the things that keeps us from listening is a ton of extended conversation before getting into the episode. And so we try to not do that.
I don't always sound like this, so this is going to be the first.
So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump on into our episode. So, Scott, what has been on your table?
You know, it's been a little dry, other than a couple of the games that you and I have played. And I mean, I'm sure you could bring those up because right now, off the top of my head, can't really think of them. The only game that's been able to hit my table at home has been Santorini, The Riddle of the Sphinx, because that came out and I, of course, just absolutely adore things from Roxley. And it's so neat, and it has a nice solo mode, and it's logic puzzles, and you're still playing the game of Santorini based on how you know how to play the game of Santorini, but just in a scope of, how do I normally do this in the context of figuring out how to do these things in a certain order. Really, really sweet.
You showed it and you brought it on, put it on the table, and it looks gorgeous.
So
I mean,
neat.
yes, it's Roxley and all that, but all the extra tweaks and turns for what is Santorini, and it requires Santorini.
Yeah, you have to have Santorini. You just have to. But they do have, like, the differences is, like, there's another god deck because it works specifically within the Riddle of the Sphinx. Because, like, they don't give you any extra pieces, but they tell you, of those pieces, what do you need? What gods are in power? It
has bridges, though.
Yeah, so there's bridges as well. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I haven't hit any of the bridges yet. I've just done a couple of the beginning puzzles. But so much fun. I love logic puzzles. You know, it's one of those things. And the fact that it has been mixed with Santorini, it makes me very, very happy.
Obviously, this is more of just first impressions from you. This isn't in any of the segments. We're not going to review on it yet.
Nope.
But how do you think you're going to approach it from a solo versus co-op? Because I know there's the scaling difficulty for your objectives, but do you feel like that's something you want to play with somebody else, or you like the puzzle as your brain?
I think for me, I think I'm going to end up probably playing it more solo than anything, but it's going to be one of those things of, I know who of my crew will totally get this because not everybody is a huge puzzle person. Mm-hmm. I love puzzles.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
So. Yeah, so like I think of everybody, it will probably come to this table for you and I to play it. Outside of that, it's probably just going to stay at home and be my little nugget of bliss. What about you?
So I have had an array of things. It's been a little bit since we've recorded, actually. So we've had the ability to sit and play and have some good times with multiple people. The first thing, and this is actually something I've been trying to do to start my workday off, where I'll actually come down to my office a couple minutes early, and I've been putting a Gentle Rain on the table.
Still such a great game.
It's a way for me to zen out just right at the start of the day. It takes, 5 minutes to play around a bit. And I am going ahead, throwing on post-hardcore or something instrumental, and just really vibing with Gentle Rain. It's been very useful for that. I had Austin over for lunch one day, and he had never played Amun-Re, which, considering who he is, the games he likes, and the fact that Amun-Re is a masterpiece. He loved it. He beat me because I made an error, and I realized when I made the error, because we were in the final turn of the Old Kingdom phase, and I was like, I know I need to do something. I know that I just bid on the temple track to get the 3 things. What did I need? And I forgot, so I just took cards. And what I needed was the pyramid in the corner, because then it would give me a set and I would have had 4 more points. And I looked at him and I said, if I lose, it's because I made this error, and I lost by 3 points.
That's what I was about ready to say. You lost by 3, didn't you?
Oh, it was such a bummer. But it didn't matter because I got to play Amun-Re, and it is still such a phenomenal game. And at 2, that game's incredible. I got to sit down with my brother and teach him Scales of Fate.
Nice.
Which he thoroughly enjoyed, because he looked at me and was like, I know I don't play that many games, but I have never played anything like this. I cannot believe somebody came up with the idea of this game. And then, I did my spiel of IV and mad scientists and all the things, but he was very, very much impressed by that. Keeping on the IV train, I've been playing more Tend, because Tend is still incredible, and I still have a prototype, and I cannot wait for the full copy to come in.
I can't wait to see it.
Boy, I really like Tend. And then we got to sit down the last time we met, and we played A Message from the Stars.
We did.
Because after editing through episode 20, I'm sitting there thinking, I just need to play this again. But I got to be the alien this time.
You got to be the alien this time. And by gum, we did great.
We got 11.
We got 11 again
because I used an obscure meaning.
Oh my gosh! Well, and it was just obscure enough. Like I was like, okay, it could be this or this, and I was on that 50-50, like I've always been when I've ever played, and it's just like, yes, I have a bad feeling it's either this or this, and I'm glad
it was a coin flip, and
it was a coin flip, and I was like, I think it's this one, and we're like, nope. Message in the Stars, like, I'll be honest, currently as it stands, it's going to stay in my top 10 for this year.
I can't imagine it's going to fall out your top 3.
No, it might, honestly, depending on how much more I get to play of it, or if I get a chance to play some more Dice Throne, because that's been kind of on a hiatus just for a little bit, just because of how busy everybody is. Mm-hmm. It might flip-flop with Dice Throne and end up being in a number 1 spot this year. But it's definitely going to be in top 3.
Yeah.
It's such a good word game.
If you are willing to put yourself through that much intense scrutiny, because there's a lot of scrutiny. And there's a lot of moments of staring and quiet and just trying to mind meld, like, just follow me through. Like, look at the logic of why I like it more as the alien. Not because the other side is bad, but because the tension is more loaded towards how can I give you that information? How can I pick a word or build something in a way to have you understand I gave you a word 2 ways to show that it can't be this letter, because otherwise it would be this score. And, I really like that mental load versus I have no idea what I'm going in for, and I have to figure everything out. I like it both sides. I think I do like it more as the alien. It is not one I'm going to be able to pull out with everybody, but yeah, it will most likely make my top 100 this year. Yeah. I would be very surprised if it didn't.
Gee, I think I would be willing to play any period of time, whether it be I'm on the alien or the scientist side.
Cool.
Because, my God, love that game.
So yeah, those are really the big things I've been playing, and it sounds like I've gotten a lot played, and frankly, I haven't gotten nothing, but it's been real few and far between. So I am going to be returning to Board Game Arena, because I took some time off around the end of the year because so much stuff was going on and all the things, and I'm just jonesing for some Arc Nova and other games. Keyflower, I need to play some Keyflower again. So if you want to play on Board Game Arena, hit us up, email me. I'll add you as a friend on there, and we will go ahead and play some games.
Alrighty, BATT family. We have been bouncing this idea for a while now, and we've workshopped a title for this brand new segment. We've decided to call it The Mechanic Shop. And the reason why is because we are going to talk about a specific game
mechanism.
I'm
good with the name because it works, but it's a mechanism, not a mechanic. But I know we both used it.
Yeah. What will happen is that when this certain subject comes around, we are going to take one of those mechanisms and choose a couple games that we feel use it very well. Hopefully, we're going to try to scale things. So a beginner side, and then to where it goes to more complex, especially games that we really, really enjoy.
Or talking about it from an aspect of this is one way it's implemented, this is another way it's implemented, that type of thing. It's worth noting that when you're looking at board game terms, and this is something we'll be talking about in a future episode where we've talked about a board game 101 that's coming up. We've been doing a lot of planning around that. There is essentially a term called action selection, and worker placement is a variety of action selection, because that is how am I going to interact with the game and what am I going to do with it. It could be action points like Pandemic, where you have 4 points in your turn, or 5 if you're the generalist, and you can just choose how you're going to do them. You have worker placement where I'm going to place something. You have something like Dune Imperium where you are going to play a card that's going to tell you where you can go with your worker. There's a whole variety of ways, but generally speaking, in a worker placement game, you are using one or more workers to choose what you're going to do on your turn in whatever way.
Yeah. So we decided for the very first one, we were actually going to start on the far side of the alphabet, starting in the W's and going with worker placement.
Great mechanism. One we both love.
It is one we both love. And it was very, very easy. And in fact, when we started the list, we both put the same game on there, and I get to do the very first one, which I feel is perfect for any beginner gamer that wants to start working in the worker placement field, which is Charterstone. Such a great game to sit there and learn what can become a very complex mechanism.
Even within that specific game, it gets very complex.
But what it does so brilliantly is it starts you off with a couple, and then you slowly build as the game progresses, which is the reason why I put Charterstone as the very first one to discuss on worker placement.
Charterstone is a worker placement game where you are developing essentially a colony for a kingdom. They don't call it that. You're on an island.
Yeah,
but essentially, you're extending the reach of a kingdom.
You are a settler. Every settler is a different color. Each of those colors inadvertently ends up being a different resource of sorts. Essentially. Well, I mean, because like purple ends up almost like supernatural, and blue kind of gets into very industrial. Sorry to spoil anything if you haven't played the game. It's a good game, and your decisions, I'm going to unlock this thing, which will also give me these things that are potentially unlockable, and it builds and compounds off itself. So it has that beautiful progression and level progression in a sense.
But it does come down to being a strict campaign game that once you're done, you can play it. But yeah, you're just progressing a settlement. That's really the right word for it.
Yes.
I was not going to tell you my games because I like when we come in and have that little bit of back and forth of, really? And you mentioned Charterstone. I'm like, okay, I'm going to let you have that one.
Beautiful.
So that way we can load something else in.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the way Charterstone does worker placement, there are two interesting things that it does,
right?
And that is type of worker.
There is several different types of workers that are in that game.
You have different size workers, and then you have other workers that get unlocked as the game continues.
Exactly.
So depending on where you go, but it also brings in worker bumping.
True.
And that is a whole segment on its own of, if you're looking at a worker placement game, is there going to be territory tension, or is it going to be shared space?
Right.
And in this particular case, it is still a little bit of that tension, because if I bounce you, then I'm giving you a turn back and you don't have to clean up. But it's more positive because it means that you aren't actually taking the space from me. I can still go there.
Yeah, I can still use it. You could potentially bump me back off of it or move on to another space that's going to continue to progress the game. So yeah, when thinking of worker placement, like this was clearly the best choice for me with the games that I have played and enjoy to start off this little journey about talking about the games that deal with this mechanism.
And generally speaking, in Charterstone, unless you are at one of the spaces that is just give you resources, you are going to generally be converting a resource into something else. You're going to be unlocking something. You're going to be doing things.
Correct. So where are you starting your journey at?
Same company.
Beautiful.
I love Charterstone for a variety of reasons, but I actually think it is one of Stonemeyer's weakest games.
I will definitely agree that it's not the strongest of Stonemeyer games. Like I said, for a beginning journey, I felt it was like a great one to choose.
So if you have the ability to play the app of Charterstone, it's a great way to do it, so long as you have an iPad or something larger size.
You need at least a tablet. Don't do it on the phone.
It's terrible to play on the phone.
Oh, God.
But what I really like about Charterstone is that progressive, I'm going to learn how to play more games and bigger games like that. My problem with Charterstone ultimately is once you get into the middle of the campaign, it can feel a little like, okay, I've got to lock myself in now. We've got to finish this. And now here's all the things, because that game opens way up.
Oh my gosh, does it ever.
And frankly, I don't think the post-campaign game is that fun.
No.
And I did 2 full campaigns of the game, and I had 2 complete custom sets of stuff, and it's interesting. But at that point, if I'm going to play a complex worker placement game, it's not going to be Charterstone.
Yeah, I too have the board, did the recharge pack, did that. I have the digital version. Once I was done with the digital, I've played another digital version. I just started back over.
It's just the way to do it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm also starting with a Stonemaier game.
Beautiful.
And I have talked about a variety of them. There's many choices to make on this list.
There is.
Because it is one of Jamie's favorite mechanisms to work with. But for me, I'm going to start with viticulture.
I was figuring as you were, especially when you were starting to talk about the different types of workers.
So it's actually not the different types of workers that brings me here, even though there is very much a difference between your regular worker, your grande worker, and if you have the temporary worker, if you go last in the year. Yeah, it's just another extra guy, but having that extra guy can be a big deal in that.
Yeah.
I am actually going to viticulture because I want to look at the way you interact with the spaces.
Okay.
Viticulture, you are the heads of a winery and a vineyard, and you are going to grow your grapes, you're going to bottle them, you're going to age them, and you're going to sell them. It is a very strict progression of we are a small vineyard that can produce maybe a bottle of wine in the first year, but probably not, to the end of the game being, I'm going to try and score out a bunch of things. I'm making champagne, and I'm making rosé, and I'm making all kinds of stuff. And in viticulture, there is that strict turn tension of do not take my space, because there are 3 spaces open on each action depending on player count. So if you're only playing a 1 or 2 player game, you only have the 1 space to go to. Only 1 person can visit it unless you have your grande worker.
Right.
But you only have 1 of those.
Right.
And so deciding which season am I going to use this in? Which action am I going to use it in? And we always play viticulture with the friendly bonuses rule, where you can't just take a space to consume the bonus unless that's the only space left open.
Right.
And so there are moments where it's like, I need that space to get that 1 coin discount to be able to build the building or whatever. I really, really like viticulture. It is, frankly, a comfort food game for me. It's in my top 10. It was at the start of the year for me. And it's always kind of floated some around in there. It's bounced in and out. But viticulture for me is just such a beautiful game because it is a linear progression of I'm going to start very small and I'm going to use my workers. I'm going to try to get more workers, because it is a game that starts you with a few and you're able to get more. And part of the game is, do I need more? Which is, I think, a very important decision to make in a worker placement game.
Oh, yeah.
But that idea of I am able to go there and nobody else is. I am locked in there until I have finished winter and I have pulled all my guys off the board. Because that means that my choices are directly affecting every choice you're making potentially. Or maybe you just need everything in winter and you don't care any of the things I'm doing in summer.
Right.
There are plenty of arguments of regular versus Tuscany or the more visitors. I like it all, but viticulture is my choice. I actually prefer viticulture to Tuscany because Tuscany is bigger, it's heavier. Yeah, it's a more interesting board, but it feels like a much different game to me. But when I'm looking at, if we're digging into this mechanism, I love it because it gives me that turn angst with that 1 pressure release valve of, here's my grande. Do I need to use it on your turn to somewhere that you took? Or am I able to use that on myself? And now I can score 2 order cards. I think it teaches a lot of things, but I also think for just strict turn angst, don't go where I need to go, few things do it better.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. I haven't gotten a ton of plays of viticulture. I've done Viticulture World. Don't believe I've ever played Tuscany off the top of my head. But yeah, viticulture is a beautiful game because it's neat to sit there and be like, I go third. Please don't take that spot. If you take that spot, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do next. Okay, what is my other option? Okay, I could do this or do that, but I really need to do this one because if I do this one, I'm at least not sunk for this season.
There are moments of the game where you are angsty over picking turn order.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, I would go to viticulture for this because I like that idea of don't go where I'm going to go.
You want that tension, that little bit of that minor bit of stress.
You're going to see that a lot in more classic Euro games that are worker placement.
So kind of building off of where I started with Charterstone, I decided to go with what I feel is a very comfortable next step up, where it does have the, oh gosh, I really hope they don't go to where I'm going, or I'm looking at your resources that you have been grasping from the shops in the town. Gosh, I hope you're not trying to get this endpoint goal where I absolutely love it. And the fact it's a game we've mentioned before, but probably not in this type of detail. My next choice is Flamecraft.
Sure.
Because it has a fantastic worker placement feel to it, because it doesn't matter how many players there are. There are typically 3 spots in every single shop. Mm-hmm. There is no take that aspect, but there still is that little stress of, God, I really hope they don't go here because I don't necessarily want to give them a resource when I go there, or I really want to go there because I'm this close to completing this enchantment to the building because I want to get those points. I want to get those extra resources. I feel a nice natural progression because you don't know what shops are in there. You know, you have so many meat, you have so many veggie, you have so many crystal, but then there's a bunch of random ones in there as well. Mm-hmm. You're going to have several randoms, and depending on when they show up, and not all of them are going to get used because there is still several that will never show up before the end of the game. It's very, very interesting.
And the fact that there will always be 6 locations to go to. And like you said, as you're adding dragons to them and you're putting more effects in and all the various things with that. It's interesting because I don't know that I would have inherently thought of Flamecraft as a worker placement game because you only have one worker. Right. And it feels like, okay, I'm just going to go here. And because of that positive player interaction, because it is just, okay, I have to give you a resource to show up. But I do think it makes sense to call it that because there are multiple options of what you're going to do at each shop.
Yeah.
And what you are doing is in not inherently direct conflict with the other players, but you are building off of the other players.
Right. That okay, I am the first person that's going to go to the crystal shop. Do I go to the crystal shop and turn in a leaf to get this thing, or am I going to turn in meat to get this aspect? Or, oh, hey, I've got this third option, which is I can turn in these 2 things and it does a totally different option. You know, that's where that nice spread of options that a lot of worker placements don't have, because typically if there's a location, there's one option. You get to do this one thing. And the fact that not only do I start with 6 shops in the game, those 6 shops each have 3 options. And how you decide to operate within those buildings is totally different, because it's, okay, great, I'm going here to get resources, but you're going to come over here. Yeah, you're going to come to the building. Yes, you're going to still give me a resource, but you're coming to enchant the building. You're coming to make the building better for the next time a person comes in. That's amazing, because you're on a totally different aspect, where I went to resource collect, you went to make it better.
And the variable setup is interesting for a worker placement game because there are many games within this particular realm of the mechanism where you are not going to have the same spot show up every time.
Exactly.
You are going to have people that are going to defend Agricola head and shoulders above many other games. And I frankly think most of them are wrong. I'm sorry, Carlo. I don't like that game. I understand his argument because what order the worker placement spaces come out, how you're going to interact with them. Maybe something you normally see come up on round 3 doesn't come up until round 7. It can affect the way that you approach the game and approach that worker placement. So, yeah, I think this is an interesting one for that mechanism, as well as the fact it is friendlier than other games.
Yes. You know that at the very beginning, there's going to be one of every shop, but there's so many different types
of each type of
that shop. Yeah. So great. Yes, you know that there's going to be a meat shop, but you don't know which one of the meat shops, because it could be the one when this happens, I get to do this totally other thing where I haven't even seen this one. I know that there are shops that as many times as I've played Flamecraft, I have not seen every single one of the buildings outside of going through the deck to look at every single one of them.
It's an interesting choice. I love the game. We've talked about plenty.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I like it for that idea of having variance within the spots themselves. Yes. So I'm actually going to build on that.
Beautiful.
With my other game. And this is one that has been mentioned in passing, but we have never actually talked about this game in any detail. And we have never played it together.
Really? Has it been one that we've both talked about separately? I'm sure it's one that you have. Well, I'll find out once you say it. So
we have talked about Century
many my God, times. Yes.
I'm talking about Century, in this case, Golem Edition, an Endless World, or Century, a New World. And there's a couple different reasons I want to bring this one up.
Right.
Outside of the fact we just don't talk about it very often. We talk about the much more popular game in the line. But Century Endless World, I'm going to refer to as Endless World because that's the one I have. It's the one in
Correct.
front of us. But know that just like the other Century games, they are identical except for their theme. When you're looking at an Endless World, there are two things that make me find it interesting and worth discussing in a conversation like this. The first one being what we just covered. It is variability within the actual setup, depending on what spaces are there or what spaces you can unlock through the course of the game, because I really love that this does that of here's our starting set of spaces we can go to, and as the game progresses, you're exploring the board, you are finding more stuff. Again, people will bring Agricola up for this, but I don't like Agricola.
And honestly, that's your prerogative.
But the other reason I look at it is there's this other aspect that gets brought up with a variety of other games. I think the most common example of this is either going to be Stone Age or Architects of the West Kingdom, and that's that the game gives you just a fistful of workers. And if you want to go where somebody else is, you have to play more workers than they did. So if I go to a space first, I have to play my one worker. If Scott wants to come in because I can't bump myself, Scott has to pay 2 workers. And then if I want to take a spot again, I can, but now I have to spend 3 and it keeps going back and forth like that. And Century,
right. It's been a while since I've played this.
It's such a good game. It's so underrated. And unfortunately, this one is the better version. And it's not even a theme thing. It is a component thing because the workers in Brave World are itty bitty little guys. And they are full-size workers.
They're full-size workers in that one.
The colors aren't as good, which is really annoying for the player factions.
Right.
But they're usable. But that idea of instead of having 1 that you're going to put out on each turn, or only having 4 over the course of the game, or 6 if you build properly viticulture, whatever.
Right.
In Endless World, you start with 12.
Wow.
And so because
that's usually a mechanic like you build up to that number.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And in Architects of the West Kingdom, you start with 20. And so it's one of those interesting things of, okay, how do I want to spend this fistful of guys? Do I want to keep going back to the same spot? Do I want to make that something that I only go to just to block him and make him burn an extra one? It's such an interesting decision space of instead of only having 1 to place on a turn, having an upper limit that you can and choosing how to use it. Because you can just go to 2 spaces that require 6 each. You only get 2 actions on your turn.
Yeah.
But you could do that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I really, really like the Century series. I really like an Endless World. I think Eastern Mountains is okay, but I also don't like Pick Up and Deliver. That'll be an interesting one for us to talk about because I think you like it more than I do.
I think I do.
And this is one that I think if you are looking for that strict page of rules.
Yeah.
And they give you a glossary sheet. So this one is a front and a back and another front. But that's the joy of Century is it's light rules, really interesting interactions. Right. But yeah, the fact that this still does what do the actions do? How are they laid out? How are they being explored out? I really like this game. And it doesn't get talked about enough, especially in that category of here's a bunch of guys, figure out what you're going to do with them.
Yeah, because I don't know very many worker placement games that give you a ton of guys. Typically, it's one of those things that you have to work towards. Mm-hmm. Like it's, hey, cool, I finally did this one thing. It took me like 3 rounds to do it, and I got 1 new dude.
Yeah. Stone Age, Atlantis Rising, Architects of the West Kingdom. This one, it is a surprisingly robust category within worker placement, but it doesn't get talked about very often, and I really like it. I've heard it referred to as worker investment before.
That's an interesting term, yeah.
But it's that
still
idea.
Ultimately, like
it's a worker placement.
It's a worker placement because I'm still placing my workers on the thing that I need to go. Nice. I like that one. Yeah. As soon as you said, I went, oh, that's right, because I've not played that one in quite some time.
Anyways, that's where my next step is. Where are you landing this plane for this conversation?
So landing my plane for me is going to be a game that I have talked about, and now I'm going to talk a little bit more. I'm kind of building up on 2 things that I talked about in Flamecraft, which was the whole idea of multiple different types of locations to land on, but you're still doing the basic thing of worker placement, and that is the fantastic game, one of my favorites, Lords of Waterdeep. Mm-hmm. The difference in Lords of Waterdeep is, so you're either trying to get people, I'm going to go to this location in this town to get warriors, rogues, wizards, clerics, or I'm going to go over here to purchase a shop.
All represented by just glorious cubes.
Until
Source has beautiful upgrades, but still,
trust me, that is my plan this year. Is my big purchase will be that upgrade kit because I adore Lords of Waterdeep. And you have this stack of shops. You don't know what order they're in. And then when it's time to flip over, you're like, here's 3 options. They cost 3 different amounts. It depends on what you really want to go for. Mm-hmm. What do you think that is going to progress your game the best? And there is that tension that you talked about earlier in viticulture, because I go to that spot to buy a new building for the town. Only I can do it unless you got one of those rare abilities that allows you to come in and be there as well. But typically that means unless it happens every single round, there's still only one building coming out every single turn. You only have so many guys. You have so many agents that are working for you. And then you get one additional agent later on in the game. Depending on how many players it's, you start at 2 and you progress to 3, or you start at 3 and progress to 4. Mm-hmm. You still have a very small space of where you're going to be working. Now there is spots where you're able to remove one of your guys and then place them in a new spot. But still, even that is rare. Because then you're sitting like, okay, I'm going to go here so I can play a card. And then eventually I'm going to get to put this person here. But that's after everybody else has already done it. And if I'm not in the tavern first, I have to wait till everyone's done. Mm-hmm. And then I'm still playing leftovers. And boy, I really hope that the spot I do want to end up hitting hits, or I've hit those spots that I wanted earlier because it's going to make my game the best. Hopefully, whatever's left open is still decent enough for me to justify going to the tavern and spending an action card.
Yeah.
I love it. Every time the game is different. I know you probably don't.
I have played it once.
Really?
And it has been pre-pandemic.
You know what? I love the game enough. I have the whole thing. It's so much fun. I just enjoy the heck out of it.
It's got that great D&D theme on it. It is well regarded as a...
Which, of course, I'm the big D&D nerd. It's one of my absolute favorite worker placements.
It is,
and I don't
get
it
out
on the
that
table
I
enough.
am absolutely shocked does not have a second edition.
Same.
Or even a reprint, frankly.
Right.
Because that box is enormously big, because the board is enormously big.
Yes, it
and
is.
I think
It takes up so much table space.
You could do a 6-fold board and shrink the box size down.
Yeah,
It's very
probably.
annoying they
Yeah.
didn't. But
it'd probably be about this thick, though. It'd be pretty. She'd be thick then.
I mean, have you seen the size of my Wonderlands War Deluxe
But then
box?
again, that's right. Wonderland's War's got a pretty good...
So,
She girthy.
She girthy. She real girthy.
She real girthy. And that's such a great game.
What a weird segue.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yeah, no, so that's one that I want to try more of. But I remember liking trying to collect... I mean, essentially your classes, your rangers and druids and everything, or they're just representing resources.
Yes.
But it's a fun thematic tie, and I think it does what Flamecraft is doing in that I'm going to open things up, but do it in a more traditional worker placement.
Yes.
Here is a space, don't go to my space type of interaction.
It has the beautiful things that you talked about viticulture of that, oh God, I hope they don't realize that this is what I need. Mm-hmm. But if they do realize it's what I need, they're probably going to block me unless it doesn't benefit them other than to block me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes blocking isn't enough.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the best thing you can do is just block.
Yeah.
But in a lot of the games of Lords of Waterdeep I've played, great, I block you. I also just screwed up my turn by doing so. And that's why I really enjoy that game. Because, I can do the block. It's probably going to screw me up.
Yeah.
And just like that modularity of there's just so many options. It just hits me in the lovely feels. And we've had this private discussion. Of course, there's talk about the missions and you have all those things. I do agree that those forced missions that you throw on a person, you could totally remove those. And I think the game would be just that much better.
It would, because it came out at that time where I understand why they did it, and they were trying to create more direct interaction.
Yeah.
But that entire mechanism just felt like me of, we're just extending the length of the game arbitrarily.
And honestly, in Lords of Waterdeep, you don't necessarily have to have that direct interaction, because the whole thing is, the moment that I put a piece on a spot that you potentially could want, I'm going to have that direct interaction. It's going to be, you're going to give me a dirty look and you're going to call me a name.
Yeah, and that's the joy of that tense worker placement.
Yes, exactly, because that's absolutely fantastic. So how are you landing your plane? Because you've gone in a very interesting arc.
I am landing at the worker placement system that is arguably my favorite.
Okay.
And I've seen it in exactly one game.
Okay.
Technically two, because there is another variation of it. But this is Raiders of the North Sea.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm going to very specifically be talking about Raiders of the North Sea. I refer to that as Raiders. There is Raiders of Scythia, which came out 5 years after North Sea and was kind of this half step. It kind of included some of the expansion stuff, but kept it in its own box. It's hideously ugly and the iconography isn't as good. And I have a lot of issues with Scythia.
Gotcha.
But if you hear me ever say Raiders, I'm talking about North Sea. If you hear me say Scythia, that is me talking about that one.
Raiders base box.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Well, or with the expansions.
Or with the
you can
expansions,
include
yeah.
Fields of Fame or Halls of Heroes.
Okay.
And I'm very happy with that. In fact, I think the game is improved by the expansions. But the system is the same regardless, so we're just going to be talking Raiders.
Excellent.
In Raiders, there is 3 strengths of workers. There's black, gray, and white. And everybody's going to start with 1 black worker. And I will say I hate describing this game because you have to use those colors. And
right.
I wish the colors were different, but c'est la vie. You are Vikings that are going raiding. So again, when you look at the theme, it is historically complicated, certainly.
Yep.
Because you are going to go pillage villages and ports and forts and monasteries. And the game concludes after you've raided a certain number of spaces on the board.
We're pretending to be bad people.
It's not, I mean, Vikings are morally whatever they are.
Yeah, right. That's true. True.
We don't need to get into that conversation.
Yeah.
But essentially, you're going to start with a black worker that can only go to certain spaces because each space on the board will tell you what color of worker can access it. And interestingly, the black workers normally are going to stay closer to home. But that also means that the actions they do within the home village are stronger than anything else.
Which makes sense because they don't have to exert themselves going out. They don't have to do the travel.
And as you are going and taking actions, on your turn, you're going to place a worker, and then you're going to pick up a worker. But what's important is they are not the same worker. So you actually start by finding an open space, placing the worker, and taking that action. Then the second half of your turn is taking a worker off of a space, thereby opening it up for other players to use following your turn. But depending on what you're doing, you may be picking up a different color than what you're putting down.
Okay.
And there are moments where, especially in the village, the white workers that can go raid the farthest aren't actually able to do anything at home. So it's some really interesting balance of what workers am I going to use, but that tension of I need you to leave that space open and or fill that one. Because the amount of times in that game, it turns into the spaces are backwards. I need that empty and I need that one to be filled, and they're flipped. It is so deliciously tense and it's so interesting to be in that position that figure, okay, so I can't place a worker where I need to. How can I work myself around and adapt my strategy to make that okay for my next turn?
That's really interesting because I don't know many games where I want the space to be filled. Typically it's, I need it to be empty. And I think I've played Raiders once, but off the top of my head, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as other games. And so again, it's one of those
I would be very interested to see your response to it now, especially as we've done everything and you've played more games and all the things. I don't know what your opinion of it's going to be, but Raiders has been in my top 10 since I first played in 2018. It's never left my top 10.
Wow.
It is just an excellent game because it is so incredibly unique. If you're talking about, do I want more workers on a space? The only other one I can really come up with is Architects of the West Kingdom, because you're going to get more stuff the more workers you have. But also means that when you do the, hey, I'm going to take all your guys and throw them in jail,
you lose a huge chunk.
Well, but that's the return, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the one thing that we have neglected to talk about in this entire conversation is how you pull back your workers.
Right.
We kind of touched on it with Charterstone with the bouncing.
Yep.
But generally speaking, when you're looking at worker placement, you're looking at, am I going to pick up my workers after every round? Mm-hmm. Am I going to be able to have them given back to me in some way?
Right.
Or do I have to take a turn like you do in Charterstone, more often than not, of I have to do nothing on my turn but get my guys back?
Right.
And that circle is so interesting, and it changes the way everything else works. And that's why I like Raiders the way I do, because it says I always have my worker. So I'm going to put one down, and now I'm just going to go pick the one up I want.
Yeah, because looking at my 3, Charterstone is either I take the action to pull all my guys back, or I hope that someone decides that they want to hit the space I'm on. Flamecraft, I'm always bouncing. I'm just always moving to it. I just can't be in the same shop. And then Lords of Waterdeep, it's that whole, I place out all my guys at the end of everything, then I receive all my guys back.
And Viticulture is at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So at the end of a full round. Endless World is going to be when I've bounced or when I've run out.
Right.
And Raiders is literally every turn.
That's amazing that we each picked 3 different games with a nice natural progression that also have 3 completely different ways that not only are the guys placed, but also their potential return policies.
Well, and that's
return policies.
I am using that term now. That is amazing.
I mean, yeah, because honestly, it is the truth. It is a return policy. This is how you get your guy back. It's the policy of the game, I
really, really like that. Yeah, but I think that's why worker placement was the right place to start the mechanic shop on, because there are so many approaches to it. And we have just talked strict worker placement here. We haven't gone into hybrid worker placement deck building or worker placement as dice placement, because we could have talked about Kingsburg or Dice Town or all these various things. Like, there are so many ways to interact with worker placement. It's such a good, flexible, interesting system that requires the game around it to be interesting, to make those choices interesting.
I mean, personally, as my gaming education has been happening, this has been like the best start point in understanding, because so many games do tend to have like a small little bit of worker placement. Like, I've got to try to do this thing before you. So maybe, no, that's not worker placement, but it's that whole introduction of the stress element. And you sit there and you're like, oh yeah, this feels like those sometimes when I am playing viticulture that, oh, please don't take that spot. It's those little things that you're going, okay, this is what I need. Please don't do it. Okay, I can link this back. This goes back to a root memory of a game that I first learned, and this is what, and it could be a totally completely game, but it brings that element back.
It is very much a mechanism that can build upon itself.
Yeah.
And you can teach it and have it go to another game and say, okay, so we used this before. This is how we're changing it up now.
Yep.
Worker placement just, to me, makes sense in a way that a lot of other mechanisms can be very obtuse. And it's just simply, you go to work every day. That's what this guy's doing.
Yep.
You put your piece out, you're going to do a thing there.
Yep.
So
that's, everybody, I hope you really enjoyed this brand new segment. We'll hit this probably, in a couple more weeks. We'll hit some of our old favorites, and who knows which tool from the toolbox we're going to pull out for the next mechanic shop.
Yeah. I do want to put one disclaimer on this.
Yeah.
And that is, we talked at length for this.
Yeah.
This was our replacement topic of the week, or rather, this was our topic
This
of the week.
is the topic of the week. I didn't really announce it as that.
But because this is so long, we are going to be stripping out our rotating segment within each episode, just to keep episode length more contained. We will probably still end up recording those and sliding those in for odds and ends episodes or whatever, just so we have stuff.
Yep.
But I think when we take the time for this, I love the fact we can just take the time for this.
Yeah, because it's been something that you guys have asked about. It was the thing in my brain. I was like, okay, we've talked about these things. Let's actually really hit it. And I am really glad that we started with one of our favorite mechanisms in a game.
Yeah.
And can't wait to see what we do next.
Hit us up. Let us know what your favorites are. Let us know what games we missed. Let us know why Agricola really is a great game, even though you're wrong.
Exactly.
Because even if
not
you're
a fan of
there,
Agricola.
I will play Caverna over Agricola every time. But again, that's neither here nor there, Carlo. That's just where we're at. So.
Yeah, and note that never did I actually talk about Endless Winter.
We didn't talk about that. We
Nope.
didn't bring up Everdell.
Nope.
We didn't bring up Targi. We didn't bring up really Dune Imperium.
No.
You didn't bring up Lost Ruins of Arnak, which barely qualifies as a worker
Barely
placement
qualifies,
game, and I
yeah.
will defend that position at length.
Yep.
There's so many different approaches and interesting things, and there's so many games that can go to it.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it's a great starter journey. So if you've got friends that you would love to get into the hobby, like you love hanging out with them, and boy, it'd be fun to have them at the table, I think finding a nice, solid worker placement game is a great way to start them out.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right. It is Why Did I Play That Time? And this one was an interesting week.
Yeah.
Because you hit me with my own game.
Yes, because this is definitely a me game.
I received this for my birthday.
You did.
So that's why I had it.
Yes.
But when we were talking about it, this one...
Oh, this sings me.
Yeah.
Because I am the puzzle boy.
And I told you there were more games coming in this series, and you got
giddy.
Very excited.
I was very giddy. I mean, just the sheer fact of the premise. And so not to like beat around the bush, the game is Kronologic Paris 1920. And as Mark had said, it is going to be part of a series. Now, what is so beautiful about this game? Honestly, it feels very much like Clue. Because you've got your suspects. But what is so not like Clue is the fact of how you get your information. In this game, you have 6 individuals: the adventurer, the baroness, the chauffeur, the detective, the journalist, and the servant. You are in Paris 1920, like we said. You are at the Grand Opera House. And your goal, depending on the scenario, but in the ones that Mark and I played, because we did do this twice, probably going to end up doing it a third time eventually here soon, is your goal is to figure out who poisoned the detective, where, and at what time.
The first 5 scenarios in the box are that.
And these are your beginner scenarios, starting off a difficulty of just a simple 1 star, and then it builds up very nicely into, I think it finishes at a 3 or a 4. But then like when you get to the third box, which is the 15th version. So you have 3 different boxes. Box 1 has 5 scenarios. Box 2 has 5. Box 3 has 5. So when you're done with the first 5 of box 1, you're hitting at a 3. So you're already knowing right there you're hitting in that nice sweet spot. And then you start box 2, gives you new things. Box 3 gives you even more new things.
Well, and not as a spoiler, because there's no campaign. I'm literally just reading what the objectives are. And scenario 2 is the Phantom of the Opera. The Phantom is very discreet. This is the only character who will be alone in a room at every time in the evening, and you need to find out who is the Phantom.
Beautiful.
Sounds really cool.
Yeah, because the first box is finding out who poisoned the detective.
And there's strict logic rules of how that works.
The beautiful thing is, for at least the 2 games that we've played, you start off by finding out who is in which rooms, starting at the 1 o'clock hour. And then the rules of the game are each person moves.
And that does not inherently carry over. You don't find out everybody in the future scenarios.
Because, like we said, it does ramp up. So, like, in the ones that we've played, we found out who is in each room at the 1 o'clock hour. They're all by themselves at the start. And then at some point, they mix, and someone ends up with the detective at a certain time, and they are the one that happens to be the one that poisoned them. They can only be with the detective by themselves. They cannot be in a group. So that's what you're looking for. You will sit there, you will pick a character card, which has windows that are cut out, or you will pick a time that has windows cut out, and then you choose one of those 6 rooms that are in the opera house. And depending on what you choose, the card will slot in behind your character card or your time card, and it will give you the information. It gives you 2 pieces of information. The first piece of information, it gives you something that is only known to you, whether that be how many people were in that room, or who that person was,
how many times they crossed
how many times they came in that room. One of those pieces of information is only known to you. The other window is what you have to tell the other players. That's shared information. And so you sit there and you walk around trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to see what the adventure was doing in the Grand Foyer. You grab the Grand Foyer card, you slide your adventure, you flip, you look. Now there is those possibilities that you get no information, and then guess what? You didn't lose your turn.
You just take
another turn. But the whole thing is,
you're still giving the other player information.
Because the whole thing is you have to say, hey, guess what? There is nothing that has to deal with this. I get to take another turn. So that means they are also crossing off that exact same information. This is so the sweet spot for me. This is the next evolution for Clue for me. And without giving me more rooms or more players like in Master Edition, this was your, I mean, they got it for you.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
So I'm a little torn on this one because there's a few different ways for me to look at this, but let's start with what I normally like breaking a game like this down into, and that's its components.
Yeah.
And the components of this are fantastic.
Right?
Everybody has your own player screen to put your sheet behind it that has the turn structure. It has what the various cards can and will tell you and the locations on there. Very clean, very strict. And on the other side, the other players can see all the characters.
Yep.
So even though you have all the character placards in front of you, they use that backside just to give more information.
Yeah.
The player sheets are all double-sided, and because you don't have to write a ton of information, at least not so far, it means it is viable to use them that way. The fact there's 15 cases in the game is great, and this is easily one of those things where we could have played the first one again, and I would have forgotten the answer.
You know, and honestly, same.
So I feel like, yeah, give this a little bit of time you can play this a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So components just across the board are great. Placards are beautiful. The map that is in front of you, you don't inherently need because it is all on your player sheet, but I love the fact it's there so that way you can more easily look at it. As a deduction game, and as a competitive deduction game, which we've talked about before, is not my genre.
No, you don't like competitive.
I really enjoyed my time with this so far. I am very interested to play more of it, and I wouldn't even be inherently against seeing the future ones, because one of the ones is Babylon, like 2500 or something. Weird setting. I'm very interested to see what that looks like. You beat me the first one, and just you had me on that. I was completely off base.
Yeah.
The second one, I had you, I think, by a turn, because
I chose not to answer. I chose not to guess.
Yeah, you are allowed to just call, hey, I'm looking. And you can both look at the same time. That's fine. But I called a turn before you because I knew that had to be my moment if I wanted to win. And I managed to figure it out, and I felt very good about figuring it out. That said, it's one of the easier cases. I get that. Do I think I can always get myself to the answer? 100% yes. But do I think I can get it faster than anybody else at the table? Probably not.
Yeah.
I like the fact that it has a solo mode, but that solo mode is just a high score variant. So you're essentially just playing just to see, can I answer as few questions as possible? And now we're getting into Turing Machine and all those issues. I like this one. I am excited to play more of it. I want to see more of these scenarios, but I am legitimately curious if I am not just going to fall off partway through, because I will get to that point where I just am behind the other players so much. It's my problem with the genre. But it's fast. It's very easy to interact with. It is so fun to just pick up the cards and be like, okay, I'm going to grab the journalist and he's going to be in the dance hall. Bam. And then watching you, I'm going to pick up the Baroness, but I'm also going to the dance hall. Oh, okay. All right. Now I'm going to do the dance hall at 4. And it's like, okay, so why are you asking those questions? It has a lot of that really interesting information and scenario building. And you're right in that it does feel like an improvement for me on Clue, because I'm always getting some information. I'm never just in the dark, or there's no way for you to just be like, oh, here's the card you've already seen.
Exactly. Except if you're like us and we accidentally forgot that we already asked this question, then we got the same question. And we did the thing of, well, we were just dumb. So,
but, you know,
tough it out.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's a short game. It's easy to interact with. I like it. This is one of my more successful Why Did I Play That's.
Yeah.
But again, I am wondering if that's just because we were in the easier scenarios, and if we get into the harder stuff, if I'm not going to fall off. I do really like the fact that everything you need is in the box and nothing is destroyed. You can easily reset this and hand this off.
I think the thing I enjoyed is that we even took our time a little bit out of that second game because we wanted to make sure that we were getting it right. It still was under 30 minutes. And it says on the box 30 minutes. And I know we didn't spend 30 minutes the first time we played it. So the fact that it's a nice, quick game, and we both are very, very interested in the next 2 boxes. So the next box is Kurzko in 1450. So obviously we're going Aztec. And then
you don't see future Iraq very often.
Right.
That is not a common theme. It's so interesting.
It's called Babylon 2300.
Yeah.
Which, very, very interested in. I can already tell by looking at these boxes, they're still using the same iconography in the corners of the box for symbology. So, like, great, we're going to these new spots, but we're still going to have a mask, a dancer, a music note, what we call the gazebo, which actually is our grand foyer, the steps, and then the pillar. Like, the fact that they're still going to use the exact same iconography for 2 more
That's cool.
versions of the game, it really makes me giddy.
It's a really neat game. I would call this a table. This is a high table for me. This is probably somewhere around on that 7. I'm excited to engage with it again, but for me, I have a feeling I know there is a shelf life on this. I can respect this design without enjoying it.
This is bread and butter to me. This is right next to my pot roast and my mashed potatoes.
Pot roast.
Yeah, sorry. I've had a very busy day. But this very much feels at home to me with my Clue and my Clue Master Detective and all the things that I do enjoy. Part of me almost hates that I like competitive deduction as much as I do. But personally, I could almost sit here and see, if I would do this with you, it'd be like, okay, yes, I was correct. How many more rounds is it going to take you? Can you be correct? Like, I don't even care if I beat you. I like the fact that I'm right. And then, like, maybe I could help you go, like, this is how I figured it out. And then maybe that would help you in future games on how to,
I think my closest comparison to this is Search for Planet X.
Yeah.
And my problem with Search for Planet X is you don't know your answers until you are checked on your answers by the game at certain intervals.
Right.
Which means I can sit there and I can posit that, there's a comet here, but I was wrong. And that means that I potentially just gave everybody bad information. Or maybe somebody that is more on top of it realizes, oh no, he's misinterpreted something and now he's off. It has that unfortunate ability of making you feel dumb. And I don't think that is present here in as intensive a way, because I think it is easy to write down. Like I said, these player sheets are great, so you can write down, okay, the detective was in the gallery once. I know that he was only once. So it gives you all the pieces, and it gives everybody all the pieces, and it does have that clue thing of, oh, I guessed wrong. Well, I don't have to announce that out loud. People just know I was wrong.
Yeah,
no, I'm out of the game because I know the answer.
Right.
But because I don't think it would take too many turns after that, like we got to a point where we were within a turn of each other calling it.
Well, yeah, because when you announced who it was, I sat there and I went, was it this, this, and this? And you were like, yep, absolutely. And I went, nuts. I just wanted one more guess just to make sure, because I wasn't 100% sure. One thing I do really, really enjoy, because of course we've often talked about this with other games, of I am older. How is the vision? What's so nice is you talk about that sheet of paper. So it's like 6 inches by what? Maybe 10 to 11, our little piece of paper here that we write on, like that's got decent size, and even that it's divided into
the icons in the center are a little small.
They're a little small.
But if you have tight writing like the both of us do, that isn't an issue. And literally you're just writing numbers.
Yeah, you're literally writing numbers like, oh, it's like, oh, look, that, the conductor was in the musical twice. That's all you need to worry about. And then like your cards that you're working with are your typical card size. So like you're looking at a traditional playing card size.
We have everything laid out on the table, and it's maybe the size of a 2x1 fold board.
Yeah.
If you're going to take a standard 2x2 and just fold in half, it's probably about that size.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of space.
It doesn't take a lot of space. This is definitely one of those things, like if you have a nice coffee shop that you want to go to, I could take this to a coffee shop and play with one of my friends over a nice cup of tea and be like...
That's got to be a segment we come up with, is just coffee shop games. Because I think we've really talked about that. Or like front porch games.
Yeah. This is what to go sit with a friend and play.
So just to wrap this thing down, you haven't given your rating.
Yeah.
We don't always give that in this, but I think you're going to give this a pretty good rating.
Oh yeah. This is totally going to be an 8 for me. Like if the next one's coming out soon, like if it's coming out at Gen Con, oh yeah, I'm totally going to grab it. Because then that way you don't have to worry about it. It'll be in my spot. Even if this one actually ends up in my collection, great. I love the idea of having a collection because it's phenomenal. So this game, and I didn't get a chance to mention it, was created by Aura Games and Super Meeple. Designers were Fabian Grolden and Johan Levitt. Sorry if I said that wrong. And illustrated by Arch Apoller and Jan Velene.
Beautiful art.
Beautiful art.
It's not a lot of it, but what's there, I think, is very evocative. It's very good.
It definitely gets you into the, okay, I am in Paris. This is French time during the time of the 1920s. So good. Very nice game. Yeah. Definitely a good solid 8. Yeah. This would have a home on my shelf. Hey, BATT Family. Scott here. Join me and my friends for a weekly live play tabletop storytelling game on Theater Geeks Twitch channel. Check out www.twitch.tv/theatergeeks on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right, everybody. So, like we said at the mechanic shop, we are going to keep this as our final segment of this particular episode, but we are going to move into our table, shelf, and trade. Let me start off with our friends over at Ivy Games.
Yeah,
because
God, I love them.
We have not been able to play this one before. You may have played it once, but definitely not with me. And this is Mythic Mischief. So I got a hold of the app because the app is free. And I was able to track down a copy of the game because of their Black Friday sale. And so we finally, 5 months later, were able to sit down with it.
Right.
Mythic Mischief is a straight up, down the line abstract game. And it has a really fun theme on it. And each player is going to take an asymmetric faction that goes to school at this academy for ghouls and witches and zombies and stuff.
Yeah.
Some really neat ideas there. And the theme is that depending on if you're in the library or in the gardens, if you're using Volume 2, that there is an authority figure who is going to try and stop you from messing around and spreading books all over the place and all kinds of stuff.
we're being ornery.
Now, I have gotten to play this both at one with the app, and I played it solo with the main boxes.
Yeah.
And I played it 2 players. I have not played it above that. Frankly, I don't want to play it above that.
No, we got to play it.
And the game itself has a variety of rules for playing it with more players. Are you going to play 4 players? Do you want to play Blitz, where you only have 2 minutes on a chess clock? There's a lot of ways to interact with the game. And each faction has a very strict framework they are working off of, but they do things very differently. So everybody's going to be able to move. That's straightforward. Everybody has that. Everybody's going to be able to interact with other figures. So when you move one of your pieces, how are you going to interact with the pieces around you? Maybe you can swing them around you in a circle. Maybe you can pull them towards you. Maybe you can jump towards something. There are walls on the board that are, frankly, I think the most interesting part of the game of shifting this maze around, because the authority figure is going to try and just make it to a certain number of destinations, and they have very basic pathing of go the shortest route, do this. You can really screw with that. And that also means that you can move the walls to have him catch your opponent, or if you're not careful, you can catch yourself. There's some really cool stuff there. And then you have the ability to distract and basically pull the authority figure over towards you, which again throws him off his pathing into some interesting things depending on which person you're going off of. And then each faction has an asymmetric ultimate ability, which you can only use if you've slotted a tome into, and or if it is after lunch or after dark, a secondary power only used in the second half of the game. The goal of the game is to get 10 points, or just have the most points at the end of the second phase when the authority figure has reached the third location. And this is all done via a really cool manipulation of action points of these cubes on a player board that are going to tell you how many move actions you can take, or can you distract, can you shove walls or break walls or teleport walls or whatever. So it's a really interesting system that frankly I am god awful at.
Good thing I was too.
You're also not very good.
No, I'm not. But God, that's a great game.
But neither of us are really big abstract gamers.
No.
Now, when you're looking at the solo mode, it is a much simplified version of actions for the opponent. They're basically just going to try and bump you into things and take your tomes and whatever. It's a very simplified rule set out of them. But there is a card selection row that there will be 3 cards out. You will flip a card on your turn. It will tell you which card you're activating. Then you deal with these things. They feel like very different games. And the fact that each faction feels as unique as it does, because I've played with 5 or 6 of the different factions now.
And there's like, what, 10?
Oh, there are 11 right now.
Beautiful.
So there's a lot between all the boxes. And
yeah, we played, and you were werewolves?
I was werewolves.
And I was the witches, because of course I was. Yeah, and I think what was so neat is the fact that you had 2 dice in movement, you had 1 die in distract, you had 1 die in your special wall movement ability, you had 1 die in whatever you would do for people moving, and then of course your stuff that was down in your for your special. And depending on which way we decided to build up our skills, because that was the one thing that you didn't mention, is like when you grab a tome, you slot it into your board, and that permanently changes how your board looks. So like your dice are able to be up higher because each ability has a set of numbers. If I have that tome in the first spot of the move, instead of my dice being set at 1 and 2, they're now set at 2 and 3, which is great.
And there's a limited number of those tomes.
Yeah.
And it's
total of 7 or 8 if you're the second player.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because the player order does feel like it matters.
It does.
Because yes, you're getting that extra tome if you're going second, but it also means that the authority figure, either the groundskeeper or the tomekeeper, is going to be moving before you take a turn, which means that if in the setup phase you don't play it right, or your opponent can see a weakness,
I can already set it up to
but it also means that if we are tied, so we both score the same amount of points at the end, or however it works, it is very possible that we have to go to the tiebreaker, which is fewer tomes. So I was constantly aware of, has he used a special? Great, he's still at 6. That means I can be at 6. Because if you had fewer tomes and we got to the same point, I would have lost in tiebreakers.
Right.
So I do think turn order is pretty important. It's going to change the shape of your game. But again, this is somebody that's terrible at abstract games. So what do I know?
Like when we say that we did bad, we both did bad.
It's supposed to be like a 45-minute game. I think it was like 2 hours. The interaction in the game is excellent.
Yeah.
But unless you have somebody that you're going to be consistently playing with that is of an equal level, or you are okay having that massive skill imbalance, this is one to pass. It's a really great game that physically I am done with. This is a table for me because, frankly, I am too bad at it. And this is the way I react to most strict abstract games, where I'm either going to be playing it with somebody who is equally as bad as me.
You're welcome.
Which means we're going to be sitting there and playing for a while, because a lot of our turns broke down to, what am I doing? Because the board state is so important.
Yeah.
And there's so much going on between each turn. It's not like, all right, I'm doing the chess thing of, okay, you made your move, now I'm going to make my move. Okay, now you make your move. It's, here's all of my moves. So you have to plan everything and be very precise. And I know that's, there are a lot of abstract games that do that. I'm not saying otherwise. Or I'm going to be playing with somebody that is just better than me, and I'm going to lose every time.
Right.
And it'll be fast, most likely.
At least it'll be fast.
But I will get my butt kicked.
Right.
And that's not fun for me. I knew that going into Mythic Mischief, this was probably going to be the outcome, but I wanted to give it a chance. And I'm very happy I played it. I'm very happy I can recommend it to people. For me, this is a 5. This is a table. And the reason it stays there is because the app. It's free to play, and you can just buy the other factions. It gives you 3 or 4 factions out of the gate. And I can play the solo mode. I can play it as local co-op or pass and play or whatever.
Oh, nice.
And it gives me that feeling. It gives me something interesting to play on my phone and be able to interact with the system. But again, it comes down to, am I going to end up being the person that is better than the other person? And that's no fun to do. It is very much a strict game of skill, and you will learn more as you play it. It's a great game that I don't really want to play again.
This would also be a table for me. I think it would be between a 5 and a 6 as well, just because it's like, it's a good game. I would enjoy the game. Like, if I had it a part of my collection, maybe I would take the time to try to figure out strategies with each of them. Yeah, it's definitely a table for me, because I'll play it. I know what the outcome is probably going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to start off with the bad. All 3 games are kind of along the same line. I decided to kind of stick with an idea of a theme. I enjoy racing games. I think racing games are a lot of fun depending on what method that game comes about. And when you're dealing with racing with dice, Cubidos.
Oh. Yeah.
Cubidos is definitely on the trade side for me. I know a lot of people like it. It just had a expansion that just came out last year. And as a person who enjoys random, because I do enjoy random, like when you're sitting there hoping that luck is going to be on your side, Cubidos is almost too much for me. I mean, I love that each color of dice can have a totally different representation as to what power it does. That's really, really cool. But still, like, the theming is just weird.
Oh, it's so weird.
We're all competitors of the Cube Cup or something along those lines, and we're running a path, and you could tell which is the best path to take, but of course I'm going to try to overtake you, because if I've got enough movement, I can do it. It's wild. I know a lot of people enjoy it. I unfortunately am just not one of those. I have it. It actually became part of the games that got used to help South Bend Roller Derby with their raffle to kick off the season. I'm not sad that I gave up that game. It's a 4. You have so many different types of dice, and they're different rarities, and there's blank faces, and certain numbers will be higher. It's just wild of that variety. And no, I'm good. I've played it enough. Like, I can't even give you, I want to say anywhere between like 3 to a half a dozen times. I'm good.
We all know. Maybe we don't. I don't know if we talked about it. I'm sure we have, because boy howdy do I hate Quetzalcoatlumberg.
Oh, that's right. You do hate Quetzalcoatl. I love that game.
It is probably, of all the games I give it to, maybe other than Robo Rally, probably the bottom of the list for me. I hate Quetzalcoatlumberg.
That would be very easily a 7 for me. But that's because I have dumb luck.
It functions as a game, so it's not a 1, but good night do I hate that game. Cubidos is a better version of a game that I loathe.
Wow.
And I would prefer to play this. If I am being forced to play one, I will play Cubidos, because the interesting bit of the game that I don't think you talked about was the dice that you were given never have more than, I believe, 4 sides with something printed on it. Might be 3, but I think there's a couple of 4.
I think there's a couple of 4s.
You cannot bust on your roll until you have gotten so many dice set with printed faces. So you're made to be able to keep going.
Right.
But once you hit this certain point where I think it's 3 dice, you have to decide, am I going to keep rolling or am I going to be done? And when you keep rolling, if you roll these dice and no faces come up, that's a bust. And it has that same Quacks thing of, instead of being able to do everything, you just move on this little side, like, sucks to be you track. And yeah, you get a little bit out of it, but it sucks to be you. It sucks to have my luck.
Yeah.
And it does have this really interesting selection where everything that you have as dice is just in front of you. You're not doing bag pulling, you're not doing anything like that. So you can at least kind of try and set up your turn of what dice you have not used yet. But the dice themselves, the more expensive and the harder they are to get, have fewer faces on them. Yeah. Which means, you can get a really cool effect if you roll the 1 out of 6 chance and you have a way to mitigate a bad roll, which you don't always have.
Yeah.
And it's a race game. I hate this one too. Not gonna lie. The art is weird and terrible. I really dislike it. Like, it's so 1-to-1 with so many of the things with Quacks, where the dice can mean different things. So depending on which card you put out for the weird cheese guy, like, I give this one a 3 because if forced, I will play it, but I will hate pretty much every second of it. I do not like this game.
I'm not upset. There are some games that I have given up and gone, man, I really wish I haven't done that, because I have started culling the herd. New phone who dis when it comes to that game. What are you bringing us home with?
Okay. This is not in my top 10 yet.
Okay.
Real close.
Okay.
It is, I believe, my most played game.
Okay.
And I have played this an enormous amount. Admittedly, mostly it has been digital.
Okay.
It is my favorite at 2 players. I've played it at other player counts. I like it best at 2. The solo is fine. Ark Nova is such a banger of a game. It is at my number 13. It came onto my list in 22 at 64. In 23, it moved up to 19. In 24, it moved up to 13. I think it is a very realistic possibility for it to break into the top 10, if not top 5. I love Ark Nova. We have mentioned the game a number of times, but I've never actually talked about it in a capacity like this before.
Okay.
I'm going to give the simple version of how Ark Nova plays, because that's the point of this. These are quick reviews. This isn't a full teach.
Right.
But essentially, you are building a zoo, and you are doing so by taking action out of a card river that is on your board. And that means you have 5 cards in front of you. You have cards, which is going to allow you to draw more cards. Build, which allows you to, build stuff in the zoo. You have animals, which lets you play animal cards. You have the association action, which is going to let you do a small variety of things, including making partnerships with other zoos around the world, or getting a partner university to have extra access there, as well as the sponsors action, which is going to allow you to either advance a end of round track and gain some money, or play a sponsor card and get a whole bunch of stuff off of that. And each one of those actions can be upgraded into stronger versions of themselves. Beautifully in the design, even though there's 5 actions to be taken, there's only at most 4 upgrades. And there are multiple times when you could take an upgrade, or you can do something else. You can get an association worker. So there's not even a guarantee you're going to have 4 upgraded actions. The game is played over an indeterminate amount of rounds because there are 2 score tracks. And this stole it from Rajas of the Ganges, 100%, because nothing inside of Ark Nova is unique or new. But it takes all this melange of stuff and mixes it all together into this beautiful stew that I love. And once the 2 score tracks cross, the game's over. All the other players only get 1 more turn. And it is, at its heart, truly a race game to get to that point. And I have played this into the ground. This is one that I have played aggressively competitively. And I have a nemesis that I have only beaten her once. But I have, and it was one of the greatest gaming moments of my life, because I was on like a 12-game losing streak to her, and then I beat her, and it felt amazing. And then I stopped playing with her for like 3 months, and then I played another game, and she crushed me again. But Ark Nova is so many things. There's so many good choices. There's so many interesting choices of, yes, there's a giant pile of cards. It is in that massive tableau building game genre that there's a whole bunch of things in now.
Yeah.
But this one just is so interesting and it's so good and it's so meaty. And at 2 players, you are just constantly watching what is the other playing, where are they at, how many sponsors have they played, what universities have they taken, where are they on their map, which map are we playing, because all the asymmetric maps are wonderful. The map packs themselves, honestly, you don't need them. They're okay, especially the tournament, the map pack 2, that's fine.
Yeah.
But then you add in the amazing Marine Worlds expansion, and that gives the deck more churn. It gives you asymmetric action cards. So now I can have a different version of the cards action than you do that I can upgrade into do even more different things. And it's so good. As a spatial puzzle, as figuring out these tight resources, it has a mixture of okay and garbage components. The money is just strictly terrible, and I replaced it with metal coins because I have extra scythe coins, so that's what we play Ark Nova with in my copy.
Yeah.
It's big, it's long, there's so many things going on, and I have been jonesing for another game of it so long. It's honestly the biggest reason I'm jumping back onto BGA, because I miss playing Ark Nova and having like 3 games of it going at all times. I love Ark Nova. I think it demolishes Earth. They're not even in the same category. There is a new version of the game coming out called Sanctuary that it looks like it is just stripping it down and streamlining it and doing stuff. Frankly, I don't want that because I like the big crunchy, like, give me the whole version of it.
Right.
But again, if it's this or Earth or, Sanctuary or Earth, I'm going to pick this every single time. Easily my favorite game in this giant genre of here's too many cards and too much stuff and take too long. Yeah, Ark Nova is bang on excellent. This is a straight up shelf 10 out of 10 game for me.
Beautiful. I've gotten to play Ark Nova twice. I own Ark Nova. I own the special map packs. I have Marine. I have not gotten to play Marine. I've only probably played Ark Nova twice. Both times absolutely loved because it was just different. And I own Earth as well. And I'm like,
The amount of variety and strategic choice, and especially that player response, because there is no direct player interaction. It's all indirect. It's all watching what other people are doing. But that tenseness of, can I keep ahead of you? Oh my gosh, what did you, I cannot believe you pulled that off. How did you get 40 points on a turn? I've seen that happen. It's crazy. Like, it's so delicious.
Phenomenal. Yeah, I need to play it more. Yeah, it's definitely one of those games if you're like, Scott, I've been feeding for this. Will you play this? I'm like, yeah, I'll play.
The amount of times that I have taught people this game and just basically sherped them through of, okay, this is the type of thing you're doing. Like, you can have some bad games, and yes, it can be long, and I would never play it at 4 players again. Way too long.
No, it's way too long.
3 is good. 2 is incredible. The solo mode is too much stuff to pull out and do for it. But as a 2-player head-to-head heavy hero,
so nice.
Anyways, so I apologize.
No. Don't you dare apologize. So to bring it home for me, I was going to do a totally different game. And I sat there and I said, no, I really want to end up on even a more positive note. I actually wanted to have a thing that I'm very happy to say that I own this game. I'm very happy to say that I enjoy every single time I play this game. I, too, wish I could play it more because for trick-taking card games, I do not get to play Yet by Yellow nearly as much as I would like to. Yet is such a fun game.
You've mentioned this in passing before. I think this was on a archive.
Yes, it was on an archive. I
still haven't played it.
I have everything. I know that my Yet board is tucked away somewhere because past Kickstarter did the whole pull everything out, put them into nice boxes and get rid of the box. And then now I don't remember where everything is. Yet is a beautiful game that can play anywhere between 2 to 5 people. And you're essentially doing the whole, hey, this is what Trump is. You're trying to get tricks, but sometimes you're not, because the first rounds of the game is everybody has tokens that they're going to put on a board. And depending on where you put them, you are trying to construct how each round is going to go, because each round could end up being very, very different, because you get to look at your hand first. And then you get to start placing tokens. You can decide who the first player is going to be, but not by saying, I'm going to be first player. I'm going to look at you like, no, Mark, you are not the first player. I'm yetting you. You don't get to be first. But then he can sit there and look at his hand and go, I do not have a single blue card, so blue is definitely not Trump. And you block out things. So you eventually block out all the spots for who's first player. You do the same thing for discard, because are you discarding one card? Are you discarding two cards? Are you getting rid of anything except a one? You have to keep your ones. Or are you passing cards to the left? Or, nope, you're just stuck with whatever's in your hand, which that's incredibly fun. You are choosing trump, one of the four suits, blue, red, yellow, green, and which I do like is the fact that they are very strongly predominant with a good symbol. So if you do happen to have a person that has a color blindness, they will definitely still be able to tell what the difference is of trump, because the symbols are very clear on these cards. There are also super trump, because ones typically are the weakest, unless it's the super trump, and then it defeats all trumps. But also there is that possibility that no, ones aren't super trump. There is no super trump. And then the biggest kicker is how many points are your taken tricks. It can be anywhere between 1 to 4 points, or even -2, where it's like, oh cool, I've set myself up that I've got 8 red cards and red happens to be trump. And then Scott is a jerk and makes all of the tricks that I take worth -2 points. I have played beautiful games where that accidentally happened, where the people I was playing wasn't paying attention and I was able to hit -2 because I had super low cards. I don't care what trump is. I don't have anything that's going to be doing me anything. I don't even have a 1 to hopefully get a super trump, but I can sure as heck screw everybody over to make sure if they take a trick, they're going to lose points. It's beautiful because every single round can be absolutely different. You play a certain number of rounds and then it's high score wins.
Huh.
Oh, so good.
I was right on board with you until you made that game sound so mean.
It can be mean, but because the cards go between, like, I think it's 1 to 13 or 1 to 14. And you're like, cool, I have a lot of numbers that are 9 and above. Every time that happens, the first thing I do, it's not at least -2 points. Boom. I at least block it.
Okay.
But then it's like, okay, cool. So you obviously have a bunch of high numbers. Well, we're definitely not making each trick taken 4 points.
Sure.
You know, and that's how it works.
Okay.
It's just one of those things of what's going to be most important to you.
It also sounds like player count matters for this.
Yes. I've played it as a 2-player game. Absolutely fantastic, honestly, because the one thing you do is like, you're going to take the red one, I'm going to take the blue player. Cool. Then we put tokens on the red or the green, the yellow, and I think the other one's orange, just because obviously they're not it. And then you deal out everything else. The deck size changes. You're like, you know, you're like, I'm going to get rid of everything that's 10 and above, you know, and that's how the 2-player game goes. But the game plays the exact same.
Okay.
And so much fun, because if you're not paying attention, I just happen to sneak in and go, okay, all the tricks are worth -2. Okay, great. This game changed because now I have to make sure you do take some of these tricks so that I'm not losing 18 points.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a lot of fun.
I mean, I'll definitely try it.
Yeah.
I'll try any game one.
Well,
except for Tantakori.
Because of our background with euchre, the way we, I mean, that's currently your present. I can't even say it's a background, but it's currently an active skill for you.
It's true.
Like, honestly, it's in your
remind me.
wheelhouse. But yeah, if you guys can find a copy of Yellow's Niet, if it's in a resale shop or you have a game store that happens to do reused games or used games, grab it, especially if you do enjoy those trick-taking games like euchre. So much
It's
fun.
another game, like you mentioned Lords of Waterdeep earlier, of it is held in such respect by the people that have played it and really like it, that the fact that the last printing of it was like 2012.
Yeah.
Because it's a game from the late 90s?
Yes, it was 1997. It was remade from a game called 4-in-1.
Okay.
Which has, I looked at the graphics for it. It's not a pretty, like they still kept the animal motif, because that was the idea. It was like, it was these animals, but like they literally went, nope, we're going to make it communist Russia in the USSR. And so like blue is an eagle, which is clearly the American. There is one that is a British, there's like a stork, which is dressed up like an Englishman.
Sure.
And then the other characters are all Russian.
Yeah.
The artwork's cute. It's super, super cute. And then it's just plain symbols, like normal suits of cards.
But it is super out of print.
It's super out of print.
Cannot believe this isn't in print.
Yeah.
Especially with Taylor's trick-taking table and all play, and there's a whole bunch of like trick-taking specific people out there. Really a shock to me.
Yeah. It would be one of those things like, if somehow I got in the ear of Yellow or like All Play, bring this back. Like, see if you can get the rights to bring this game back, because it was not an expensive game.
No,
but
never was.
Oh, it was like $12.
Deck of cards, man.
Deck of cards in a nice solid square box, and it's sat beautifully on my shelf, and it will continue until I am gone.
Thank you so much for listening to us. If you'd like to get in touch with Scott and myself or any of the other theater geeks in relation to Board All the Time, you can hit us up at boardallthetimegaming@gmail.com, on Blue Sky at boardallthetime.bsky.social. You can visit us on our website, boardallthetime.com, where we have a newsletter sign up, feedback form, archive of our episodes, and links to all of our social media, including our Facebook page. You can also join us on our Discord. The server link is in the episode notes. And finally, we'd like to ask that if you enjoy our episodes, please give us the like and follow us on your platform of choice. We know you hear that a lot, but after doing this many episodes, we really do now understand how important it is to help the show grow. Regardless, thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
At this time, we'd like to thank our sponsors. Do you like shiny math rocks? I like shiny math rocks. Go to Robin's Nerd Supplies and use the code TheaterGeeks and receive 10% off your order. Links to the website is in our episode notes. Also, we'd like to thank EcoWell Press, a local printing company here in the South Bend area. Happens to be a union shop, and they do everything for your gaming printing needs. And what's so nice is that they're environmentally friendly. You will also be able to check them out in our episode notes.
All right, Scott.
Yeah, Marky Mark.
Never call me Marky Mark. You have just really set off kindergarten Mark super hard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you
not have a funky bunch?
Oh, get out of my house.
It's such a good vibration. Sweet sensation.